Tonight, there is nowhere you need to be. No task waiting for you, no clock to follow. Only a quiet path beneath a fading sky. As you settle into a comfortable position, allow yourself to imagine a gentle evening breeze moving through endless fields of lavender. The sun is slowly sinking below the horizon. Golden light stretches across the land, turning every flower into a tiny brushstroke of purple and gold. The evening was unusually quiet, not silent, but peaceful. The kind of quiet where every sound seemed softer than usual. A distant bird returning home. The whisper of grass swaying in the breeze. The gentle rustle of lavender blossoms stretching toward the fading sunlight. You found yourself walking along a narrow dirt path. You couldn't remember exactly when the journey had begun.
Only that it felt natural to keep moving forward. The air carried the sweet scent of lavender, fresh, clean, comforting. The fragrance drifted across the fields in slow waves, as if the earth itself was breathing. On either side of the path, rows upon rows of purple flowers stretched toward the horizon. There seemed to be no end to them.
The lavender fields rolled across gentle hills like an endless violet ocean. Each movement of the wind created soft ripples through the blossoms. You paused for a moment. The sky above was painted with shades of gold, pink, and pale blue. The first evening stars were beginning to appear. Tiny lights waking one by one, the world felt calm, safe, unhurried. And so, you continued walking. Step by step, the path curved gently through the fields. Sometimes disappearing behind hills. Sometimes revealing new stretches of lavender glowing in the sunset. As darkness slowly approached, a thin silver mist began to gather above the flowers. It floated only a few inches above the ground, soft and delicate. Like a blanket woven from moonlight, the mist did not feel cold. Instead, it seemed warm and welcoming. You watched it drift between the rows of lavender, turning the landscape into something almost dreamlike. Soon the path became narrower, older, less traveled. Wild grasses leaned across the trail. Small white flowers grew between the stones. It felt as though very few people had walked here for many years, yet the path remained clear. As if it had been waiting for someone to follow it once again. You walked deeper into the lavender fields. The sounds of the outside world slowly faded away. Nodes no busy city noras on Lisa wind. Only the flowers, only the rhythm of your footsteps. Then, far ahead, you noticed something, a small light, warm and golden. At first, you thought it might be a lantern. But as you continued forward, the shape became clearer. The light was shining from a window, a cottage window. Hidden among the hills, partially covered by climbing ivy. Almost invisible beneath the growing twilight, the cottage appeared old. Very old. Its stone walls carried the marks of countless seasons. Its roof was covered in moss. Wildflowers grew around its garden fence. And yet, despite its age, the cottage seemed cared for. Loved. As though someone had quietly looked after it for generations. The warm glow from the window flickered gently. Inviting, comforting, like a distant memory. You felt no fear. Only curiosity. The closer you came, the more peaceful you felt. The lavender fields seemed to grow quieter around you. The wind softened. The mist settled. Even the evening sky appeared calmer. When you finally reached the small wooden gate, you stopped. The cottage stood before you, at the edge of the endless lavender fields, exactly where the land met the horizon, exactly where day met night. A narrow stone path led from the gate to the front door. Tiny lanterns lined the walkway. Their golden light shimmered softly against the gathering darkness. The garden surrounding the cottage was filled with herbs and flowers. Lavender, chamomile, rosemary, mint. The scents blended together in the evening air, creating an atmosphere so peaceful that it felt almost magical. Above the door hung a small wooden sign. The letters had faded with age, almost impossible to read. Yet somehow, as you looked at them, a single thought appeared in your mind. Welcome home, not welcome traveler. Not welcome guest. Welcome home. A gentle feeling settled over you, as though you had arrived somewhere you had been searching for without realizing it. The cottage remained silent. The lanterns glowed. The lavender fields swayed beneath the moonlight. And somewhere, in the distance, an owl called softly across the hills. You reached for the door. And as your hand touched the old brass handle, the warmth of the cottage seemed to flow outward into the cool evening air. The journey through the lavender fields was over. But the story of the Forgotten Cottage was only beginning. Chapter 2. The Cottage That Remembered Seasons. The brass handle felt warm beneath your fingertips, not hot, not cold. Simply warm, as though the cottage had been expecting your arrival. The old wooden door opened without a sound, no creak, no groan from aging hinges. Only a gentle movement, slow and welcoming. A soft glow spilled into the evening. Golden light drifted across the stone path and into the lavender fields beyond. You stepped inside, the door closed quietly behind you. Immediately, a sense of calm surrounded you. The cottage was peaceful, not empty, not lonely, peaceful. The air carried the comforting scent of wood, dried herbs, and freshly brewed tea. Somewhere nearby, a small clock ticked softly. The rhythm was slow and steady. Like a calm heartbeat, the entrance hall was modest. Stone walls, wooden beams overhead, a woven rug beneath your feet. A lantern hanging from the ceiling cast gentle patterns of light across the room. Everything felt carefully arranged. Everything seemed to belong exactly where it was. Along one wall stood a wooden shelf lined with small objects, smooth river stones, pressed flowers, tiny glass bottles filled with colorful petals, old photographs faded by time. Each item looked as though it carried a memory. You moved closer. One photograph showed a field of wildflowers beneath a bright spring sky. Another captured a summer picnic beneath an ancient oak tree. A third displayed a quiet autumn afternoon filled with golden leaves. The final image revealed a snow-covered landscape glowing beneath moonlight, for seasons, for moments, for memories. As you examined the photographs, you noticed something unusual. A narrow hallway stretched deeper into the cottage. At the far end stood four wooden doors, each one different. Each one painted a different color: soft green, golden yellow, burnished orange, silver white. A small sign above the hallway read, "The Seasons Remember." The words seemed simple, yet they carried a quiet mystery. You felt drawn toward the first door, the green one. The color of new leaves, the color of spring. You turned the handle. The moment the door opened, a gentle breeze brushed across your face, fresh or cool, filled with the scent of blooming flowers. You stepped inside and stopped. The room before you was impossible. The cottage had appeared small from the outside. Yet, inside this room stretched an entire spring meadow. Wildflowers danced beneath sunlight. Butterflies drifted lazily through the air. Cherry blossoms floated from nearby trees. A crystal-clear stream wound its way through soft green grass. Birdsong echoed from every direction. The air felt alive, renewed, hopeful. You walked slowly through the meadow. Each step felt lighter than the last. The grass moved gently beneath your feet. The stream reflected clouds drifting across a bright blue sky. Everything carried the feeling of beginnings, new journeys. Fresh et gentle grotte. A small wooden bench stood beside the stream. You sat for a moment, watching petals drift across the water. Listening to the birds sing from distant branches, there was no rush here. No urgency. Only stillness, and only peace. After a while, you stood once more. As you turned back toward the doorway, the spring meadow slowly faded into golden light. And when you stepped through the door, you found yourself once again inside the cottage hallway, the second old agnello, the color of summer sunlight. You opened it carefully. Warmth greeted you instantly, not overwhelming heat. Just the pleasant warmth of a perfect summer afternoon. Beyond the doorway, stretched rolling hills covered in tall grass, wild bees drifted between blooming flowers. The sky above was brilliant blue. A few white clouds floated lazily overhead. Far away, you could hear children laughing near a lake. A breeze carried the scent of fresh berries and sun-warmed earth. You followed a narrow path through the hills. The sunlight felt gentle against your skin. The grass swayed like waves beneath the wind. Nearby, an orchard stretched across the landscape. Apple trees, pear trees, peach trees heavy with fruit. A picnic blanket rested beneath a large oak tree. A basket sat nearby, filled with fresh bread, berries, and jars of honey. Everything felt abundant, comfortable, generous. Summer seemed to whisper a simple message. There is enough, not enough time, enough beauty, but enough peace. You sat beneath the oak tree for a while, listening to the leaves rustle overhead, watching sunlight dance across the grass, feeling completely at ease. When it was time to leave, you returned to the doorway, and once again, the landscape dissolved into warm golden light. The hallway reappeared. Only two doors remained. The third door glowed with shades of orange and amber autumn. You opened it slowly. A cool breeze greeted you. Leaves drifted through the air, gold dot copper. Crimson, the world beyond looked like a painting. A winding forest path stretched beneath towering trees. Their branches shimmered with autumn colors. Each step produced a gentle crunch beneath fallen leaves. The sound was oddly comforting, like pages turning in an old book. The forest felt wise, patient, peaceful. Sunlight filtered through the canopy in soft beams, creating pools of golden light along the trail. Nearby, a small cottage garden overflowed with pumpkins, herbs, and late-season flowers. A stone wall bordered the path, covered with ivy, turning shades of red and gold. The air smelled of cinnamon, wood smoke, and distant rain. You followed the trail deeper into the forest. Soon you reached a clearing. In the center stood an ancient tree. Its branches spread wide beneath the afternoon sky. Countless leaves drifted slowly around it, like tiny pieces of time floating gently downward. Beneath the tree rested a wooden swing. You sat upon it, allowing it to sway softly, back and forth, back and forth. The movement was calming. The forest seemed to breathe around you. Autumn carried a different lesson, not about beginnings, not about abundance, but about letting go, releasing what was no longer needed, trusting that every ending eventually leads to something new. You remained beneath the tree until the sky softened into evening. Then you returned once more. The clearing faded. The leaves became golden light, and the cottage hallway welcomed you back. Only one door remained, silver white, winter. You approached slowly. The handle felt cool, the door opened silently. Snowflakes drifted through the air beyond. The world was covered in white. A peaceful blanket of snow stretched across hills and forests. Moonlight reflected from the frozen landscape, creating a gentle silver glow. Everything was quiet, not empty, not cold. Simple stille. A frozen lake shimmered nearby. Snow-covered pine trees lined its edges. Their branches sparkled beneath the stars. Each snowflake drifted downward with perfect calm. You walked across the snowy landscape. Your footsteps left soft impressions behind you. The air felt crisp and clean. Every breath seemed lighter. The silence was unlike any silence you had ever known. It was a silence filled with comfort. A silence that invited rest. At the center of the frozen lake stood a small lantern. Its golden light flickered gently. You approached and sat beside it. Above you stretched a sky filled with countless stars. More stars than you had ever seen. They shimmered quietly, patiently, watching over the sleeping world. Winter carried its own message to rest, pause to recover. Not every season is meant for growth. Sometimes peace comes from simply being still. You sat beside the lantern for a long time, listening to the silence, watching snowflakes drift through moonlight, feeling completely safe, completely calm. Eventually, the stars began to blur into soft, silver light. The snowy landscape faded. En danse mort, you found yourself standing within the cottage hallway. All the doors remained closed. Silent, peaceful, waiting, you looked around the cottage. Suddenly, understanding, the rooms were not magic. At least not in the usual sense. They were memories. The memory of spring. The memory of summer. The memory of autumn. The memory of winter. The cottage remembered every season that had ever passed across the lavender fields. And now, in some small way, those memories belong to you as well. The lantern above the hallway flickered softly. Somewhere deeper, inside the cottage, a kettle began to whistle. A warm invitation, a promise of tea and of comfort. Of another story waiting to be discovered. And so, following the gentle sound, you continued onward into the heart of the Forgotten Cottage. Chapter Forgotten Guests. The soft whistle of the kettle echoed gently through the cottage, not loud, not urgent, just enough to guide you forward. You followed the sound deeper into the house. The hallway curved slightly, revealing a part of the cottage you had not noticed before. A narrow archway framed by climbing ivy. Small lanterns hung from the ceiling. Their warm glow shimmered against the stone walls. As you approached, a wooden plaque came into view. Its carved letters weighted with A. It is simply C. The tea room of forgotten guests. The words felt strangely familiar, as though you had heard them long ago, perhaps in a dream, perhaps in a story. You pushed open the door. A gentle warmth greeted you immediately. The room beyond was beautiful, far larger than it should have been. Round wooden tables filled the space. Comfortable chairs rested beside tall windows. Shelves lined the walls from floor to ceiling. Not with books, not with decorations, but with teacups. Hundreds of them, perhaps thousands. Every cup was different. Some painted with flowers, some decorated with stars, some simple and plain. Others crafted from delicate porcelain, no two appeared exactly alike. A fire crackled quietly inside a stone hearth. The scent of chamomile and honey drifted through the room. Everything felt calm. Everything felt welcoming. And yet, The room appeared empty, no guests, no host, only silence. Then you noticed something unusual. On each table sat a single envelope, neatly placed, waiting. You walked toward the nearest one. The paper had aged slightly with time. Its edges soft and worn. Written across the front were 3 simple words. For whoever arrives. You opened it carefully. Inside was a handwritten letter. The ink had faded, but remained readable. It said, "Today I watched the lavender bloom for the first time in spring. The fields looked like waves beneath the morning sunlight. I had nowhere important to go. And for once, I realized that was perfectly enough. If you are reading this, I hope you remember to enjoy small moments too." The letter ended there, no signature. Nor that. Only a quiet thought shared between strangers. You folded the paper gently. A feeling of warmth settled over you, not sadness, not nostalgia, something softer. A reminder. Nearby, another envelope rested on a second table. Curious, you opened it. The handwriting was different, neater, more careful. The message read, "I spent many years rushing from one place to another, always chasing the next destination, always believing happiness waited somewhere ahead. Then one evening I sat beside the cottage garden and listened to the wind moving through the lavender. Nothing extraordinary happened. And yet it became one of the happiest evenings of my life. Again, no signature. No exponent à mémoire sauf." The room suddenly made sense. These letters belonged to travelers, visitors, dreamers, people who had once discovered the Forgotten Cottage. Each had left behind a small piece of wisdom, a quiet memory, a gentle reflection. Not because they expected anyone to read it, but because they wished to leave something kind behind. You continued exploring. Every table held another letter. Every envelope contained a different story. One described a peaceful sunrise beside a lake. Another remembered a summer spent tending roses. A third spoke of watching snow fall from a warm window while drinking tea. The stories were simple to ordinary, yet beautiful, because they focused on moments often overlooked. Moments people usually forget. The scent of rain arriving before a storm. The warmth of sunlight on old wooden floors. The sound of distant birds at dawn. Tiny pieces of life. Collected and preserved. Like pressed flowers between the pages of a book. As you wandered through the room, you noticed a spiral staircase tucked into one corner. It led upward to a small balcony. You climbed slowly, step by step. The wood creaked softly beneath your feet. At the top, an even larger collection of letters waited. Wooden drawers stretched across the walls. Hundreds upon hundreds of them, each carefully labeled spring, summer, autumn, winter, sunrise.rain.gardens, journeys.dreams. The categories continued endlessly. A quiet archive of human memories. You pulled open one drawer labeled Quiet Evenings. Inside rested dozens of letters. You selected one at random. Itered. This evening I sat beneath a tree and watched the sky change color. Nothing happened. And somehow, that was the most beautiful part. You smiled. The simplicity felt comforting. The letters did not tell grand adventures. They did not describe heroes or battles. They celebrated ordinary peace. The kind of peace people often forget exists. As you continued reading, time seemed to slow. The fire crackled below. The kettle sang softly. The cottage settled around you with gentle sighs. Outside, the moon climbed higher, above the lavender fields. Eventually, Your attention drifted toward a small desk standing alone near the balcony window. Unlike everything else in the room, it appeared unused. A blank sheet of paper rested upon its surface. Beside it sat an ink bottle and fountain pen. Waiting, the meaning was obvious. Every guest eventually left a letter, a memory, a thought, a moment worth remembering. You sat at the desk. The chair felt comfortable, familiar. Outside the window, silver moonlight stretched across the lavender fields like a quiet sea. The flowers swayed gently beneath the night breeze. The Forgotten Cottage stood peacefully at the edge of it all, a place between memory and dream. You picked up the pen. For a moment, you wondered what you would write, perhaps about the spring meadow, or the summer orchard, the autumn forest, the winter stars. Perhaps about arriving at the cottage itself, or perhaps something simpler. The feeling of calm you carried now, a feeling difficult to describe, yet impossible to ignore. The pen touched the paper. Words began to appear, slowly, naturally. You wrote about peace, about stillness, about finding beauty in quiet places, about discovering that not every journey requires a destination. Some journeys simply help us remember how to slow down, how to breathe, how to rest. When you finished, you folded the letter neatly. You placed it inside an envelope, no signature, no date, just another small gift for a future traveler. Another voice added to the collection, another memory resting safely inside the tea room. As you placed the envelope into an empty drawer, a soft breeze drifted through the open window. The lanterns flickered, the fire crackled, and for a brief moment, it almost felt as though the cottage itself was smiling. Satisfied, content, the archive had grown once more. Another story preserved, another memory remembered. Below, the kettle whistled again, a little louder this time. As though inviting you onward, you descended the spiral staircase. The tea room remained warm and peaceful behind you. The letters would stay here, waiting patiently for future guests, for future dreamers, for anyone who needed a reminder that even the smallest moments can become treasured memories. You stepped back into the hallway. The door closed softly behind you. Ahead, another corridor stretched deeper into the cottage. At its end, a faint golden glow shimmered through a window. And beyond that glow waited the next chapter of your journey, a lantern path, a star-filled sky, and a quiet walk beneath the endless night. Chapter 4, The Lantern Walk Beneath the Stars. The door to the tea room closed softly behind you. For a moment, you stood in silence. The warmth of the letters remained with you. Their gentle memories lingered like the fragrance of lavender carried on a distant breeze. Ahead, the hallway stretched into a quieter part of the cottage. The stone walls seemed older here. The lanterns glowed more softly. Their golden light flickered across wooden beams darkened by time. You walked slowly. There was no hurry, no destination demanding your attention. Only the steady rhythm of your footsteps. At the end of the corridor stood a single glass door. Beyond, it shimmered a pale golden light. Moonlight mixed with lantern glow. Curious, you reached for the handle. The door opened without resistance. Immediately, cool night air greeted you. Fresh, gentle, filled with the scent of lavender and wild grass. You stepped outside and stopped. Before you stretched a path unlike any you had ever seen. Hundreds of lanterns lined a winding trail. Some hung from wooden posts. Others floated gently above the ground. Their warm light illuminated the darkness without disturbing it. The lanterns seemed almost alive. Not moving, not speaking. Simply glowing. Patiently, as though they had been waiting for centuries. The path curved away from the cottage and disappeared over a nearby hill above. The sky was breathtaking. Countless stars filled the heavens. Far more than could ever be seen from a busy city. The Milky Way stretched across the night like a river of silver dust. Constellations sparkled quietly. The moon hung low above the horizon, large and luminous. Its light bathed the lavender fields in silver. Everything felt peaceful, everything felt timeless. You began walking. The lanterns accompanied you on both sides of the trail. Each emitted a soft golden glow. Not bright enough to overpower the night, just enough to guide your way. The lavender fields stretched endlessly around you. Moonlight danced across their purple blossoms. The flowers swayed gently in the breeze, creating waves that rolled silently across the landscape. Occasionally, you heard the distant chirp of crickets, the call of an owl, the rustle of grass moving beneath the wind. Every sound felt natural, comforting, part of the night's quiet symphony. The path continued upward, gradually climbing a gentle hill. As you reached the top, the view expanded. The lavender fields spread across the horizon in every direction, silver and purple beneath the stars. The Forgotten Cottage appeared smaller now. Its windows glowed warmly in the distance. Like a lighthouse guiding travelers home, you paused, taking in the view, allowing yourself to simply exist within the moment. No thoughts about tomorrow, no concerns from yesterday, only this. The cool night air, the endless stars, the lantern-lit path, the calm rhythm of your breathing. After a while, you continued onward. The trail descended into a shallow valley. The lanterns became more numerous here. Their reflections shimmered upon a narrow stream winding through the grass. The water moved slowly, quietly, like liquid moonlight. You crossed a small wooden bridge, its surface smooth beneath your feet. The stream flowed beneath, reflecting stars so clearly that it seemed impossible to tell where the water ended and the sky began. Beyond the bridge, the path entered a grove of ancient trees. Their branches arched overhead, creating a natural tunnel beneath the stars. Lentling dozenov temperhundreds. Their light swayed gently with the breeze. Golden reflections danced across the tree trunks. The grove felt sacred. Not in a grand or dramatic way, simply peaceful. A place where silence was welcome, a place where the world slowed down. You walked among the trees, listening, breathing, observing. The leaves whispered softly overhead, the lanterns flickered. The stars watched from above. Every step seemed lighter than the last. Soon, you reached a circular clearing. At its center stood a stone fountain. Water flowed gently from its top. Its surface reflected moonlight like polished silver. Around the fountain rested several wooden benches. You chose one and sat. The fountain soft, trickling created a soothing rhythm, steady, relaxing, almost hypnotic. The lanterns surrounding the clearing glowed warmly. Their reflections shimmered in the water. Above, countless stars filled the sky. You leaned back slightly, allowing your gaze to drift upward. The longer you looked, the more stars appeared, tiny lights emerging from the darkness, patient, silent. Endless. Somewhere among them, you imagine countless stories, countless journeys, countless dreamers looking toward the same sky. Yet tonight, none of those stories felt distant. Everything felt connected: the cottage, the lavender fields, the letters, the seasons, the lanterns, the stars. Each part belonging to the same gentle world, a world that asked nothing from you. A world that simply welcomed you. You remained there for a long time, perhaps minutes, perhaps hours. Time felt different beneath the stars, softer, less important. Eventually, you noticed something unusual. Beyond the clearing, another path appeared, narrower, more delicate. The lanterns along this route glowed with a faint silver light, almost like moonbeams captured inside glass. Curious, you stood and followed it. The path wound gently upward once more, past sleeping flowers, past quiet trees, past small stone markers covered in moss. Everything seemed wrapped in peaceful stillness. At last, the trail reached its destination. A hill overlooking the entire valley. At its summit stood a single bench, simple, weathered, comfortable. Beside it rested an old lantern. Its golden flame burned steadily. You sat. The view before you was extraordinary. The lavender fields stretched endlessly toward the horizon. The cottage glowed warmly in the distance. The lantern trail wound across the landscape like a ribbon of light. And above it all shimmered the vast night sky. The stars seemed brighter here, closer somehow, as though the heavens themselves had leaned nearer. A feeling of deep contentment settled over you. Not excitement, not joy, something gentler. A quiet sense that everything was exactly as it should be. The world was resting. The fields were resting. The cottage was resting. And perhaps you could rest too. The breeze moved softly through the lavender below. The lantern beside you flickered. The stars continued their silent journey across the sky. You closed your eyes for a moment, listening, breathing, relaxing, allowing the peace of the night to surround you completely. When you opened your hands only slightly, a faint silver glow appeared in the distance, the first sign of approaching dawn. The night was not ending, only transforming, just as every season transforms. Just as every journey eventually leads somewhere new. The lantern beside you burned steadily, its warm light blending with the first whispers of morning. You knew the path would soon lead back toward the cottage, back toward the lavender fields, back toward the final chapter of your journey, a chapter of gentle farewells, of quiet gratitude, and of returning home. The stars remained overhead. The lanterns continued to glow, and the Forgotten Cottage waited patiently beneath the coming dawn. Chapter 5. The Gentle Return Home. The first light of dawn rested quietly upon the horizon, not bright, not sudden. Just a gentle glow spreading across the edge of the world. From your place atop the hill, you watched the darkness slowly soften. The stars remained visible for a little while longer, their silver light fading gradually into shades of pale blue and gold. The lantern beside you continued to glow, its warm flame steady and calm, as though it had accompanied countless travelers through countless nights. You sat quietly, watching the world awaken. The lavender fields below shimmered beneath a blanket of morning mist. Thin ribbons of silver drifted between the rows of flowers. The air felt cool, fresh, filled with possibility. A small bird sang somewhere in the distance, then another, and another. Soon, the valley was filled with gentle birdsong, nature's quiet greeting to a new day. You rose from the bench, taking one final look at the stars. Only a handful remained visible now. The rest had slipped away beyond the growing light, patiently waiting for another evening, another dream, another journey. The lantern path stretched before you, its golden lights growing softer as dawn approached. You began walking, step by step, following the winding trail back toward the cottage. The lavender fields welcomed you once again. Morning dew rested upon every blossom. Tiny droplets caught the sunlight and sparkled like scattered diamonds. The fragrance of lavender seemed even sweeter now. The flowers gently swayed beneath the breeze, as though offering a quiet farewell. The path descended through the hills, past the ancient grove, past the silver stream, past the small wooden bridge. Every place you had visited during the night felt familiar, comforting, like old friends. Soon, the Forgotten Cottage appeared once more. Its stone walls glowed softly beneath the sunrise. The windows reflected golden light. The garden shimmered with dew. Everything looked peaceful, exactly as it had when you first arrived, and yet somehow different. Not because the cottage had changed, but because you had. The journey had been simple. No great adventure. No impossible challenge. No dramatic mystery, only quiet moments, small discoveries, gentle memories. Yet those moments felt meaningful. The kind of meaning that arrives softly, without demanding attention, without needing words. You walked through the garden, past the chamomile, past the rosemary, past the rose of lavender swaying beside the fence. A butterfly drifted lazily through the morning air. Nearby, a robin perched upon the garden gate. Watching the sunrise, everything seemed calmed, balanced, at peace. You reached the front door. For a moment, you paused. Looking back across the fields, the horizon stretched endlessly before you. The hills rolled gently beneath the growing sunlight. The path you had followed during the night was no longer visible. The lanterns had faded with the dawn. Only the lavender remained, only the breeze, only the quiet beauty of the morning. You smiled softly, then stepped inside. The cottage welcomed you once more. The familiar scent of tea and wood filled the air. The old clock continued its steady rhythm. Tick, tick, tick. Time moved gently here, never rushing, never demanding. The entrance hall appeared exactly as before. The photographs remained upon the shelf. Spring, summer, autumn, winter. The seasons quietly preserved. The hallway of memories remained silent. The tea room rested peacefully beyond its closed door. The lantern path slept beneath the morning sky. Everything was still. Everything was waiting. As though the cottage knew that travelers would eventually return. Perhaps not today, perhaps not tomorrow, but someday. When they needed peace, when they needed rest, when they needed to remember something important. You wandered slowly through the rooms one final time. The cottage seemed brighter in the morning light. Sunbeams streamed through the windows. Dust motes drifted lazily through the air. The wooden floors creaked softly beneath your footsteps. Every detail felt familiar now, comfortable, like a place you had always known. Eventually, you arrived at a small room near the back of the cottage, a room you had not noticed before. Inside stood only a single chair beside a large window, nothing more. No decorations, no shelves, no letters, only a chair. En that view, you sat. The window overlooked the endless lavender fields. Sunlight flowed across them like liquid gold. The flowers shimmered beneath the morning breeze. Clouds drifted slowly across the sky. Everything moved at a peaceful pace. The world seemed in no hurry to begin the day, and neither were you. You remained there for a long while, watching, breathing, listening, allowing yourself to simply be. No plans, no expectations, no destination. Just this quiet moment, just this gentle morning. Gradually, you became aware of something. Not a sound, not a sight, a feeling. A feeling that the journey was coming to an end. Not because it needed to, but because it had given you exactly what you came for. Rest, stillness, peace. The Forgotten Cottage had never been about finding something new. It had been about remembering something old. Something easy to overlook, something many people forget. That peace is often already around us, waiting quietly. Hidden in simple moments, hidden in gentle mornings, hidden in the sound of wind moving through lavender fields. The realization settled warmly within you, like sunlight through a window. Soft, comforting, not steady. Outside, the breeze continued its dance among the flowers. Inside, the cottage remained calm and silent. The world felt perfectly balanced. And for perhaps the first time in a long while, there was nothing you needed to do. Nothing you needed to solve. Nothing you needed to become. You were simply here, and that was enough. The morning light grew warmer. The fields glowed brighter. The clouds drifted onward. Everything continued exactly as it should. You leaned back in the chair, allowing your eyes to grow heavier, allowing your thoughts to become quieter. The scent of lavender drifted through the open window. The distant song of birds softened. The gentle warmth of the sunlight wrapped around you like a blanket. The Forgotten Cottage remained peaceful. The fields remained endless. The morning remained calm. And somewhere, beyond waking and dreaming, a sense of perfect rest awaited. So now, as the breeze moves softly through the lavender, as the sunlight warms the old stone walls, as the cottage stands quietly at the edge of the fields, you may allow yourself to rest, to drift, to let go of the day, knowing that the cottage will remain here, waiting patiently, beneath the changing seasons, beneath the stars at the edge of the lavender fields, ready to welcome you home whenever you return. And with that gentle thought, the journey comes to its peaceful end. Good night.